Greetings, doing a little ink. I have my main drawing desk is set up in my living room, and I take all this effort to set this room up, mostly for the camera and the microphone here and the camera and all this other crap. Built the desk out of scrap plywood and 2x4s, and this desk out of scrap wood. It's all set up, but I just haven't gotten to keep myself coming to work in this room. I just find myself sticking to the old desk that I have set up in the living room. Whatever. Let it be what it is. So last night I was wasting time on YouTube. Yeah, make sure I'm in frame. Wasting time on YouTube watching various videos, catching up because I usually don't do this at work. My job is relatively dirty and grungy and automobile adjacent, so to speak. So if you see a lot of crud under the fingernails, chances are I forgot to scrub the engine oil out from underneath them, or it's ink stains, one of the two. When I was going through YouTube, and I stumbled across one of the free movies, free with ads on YouTube, of Outland. Outland, a movie from 1981. It's in the same general era of sci-fi that the movie Alien sprung from. Really enjoy both movies. But the thing about Outland, it stars Sean Connery as a grizzled old space marshal on an outpost. A mining outpost. And he's there to keep the peace. Basically to keep the status quo. And some accidents lead to the suspicion that there's something other than accidental circumstances that are causing the unfortunate demise of miners at the station. And it turns out to be an amphetamine, a synthetic narcotic, that's being distributed among the workers, and they go crazy and do crazy things. Who would have thought? And there's several things about this film that actually I like better than Alien. For one thing, there is no alien. There's no space monster, there's no tentacles or fangs or blood or guts or anything like that. It's really subdued. And one of the things about that is because of atmosphere. A lot of atmosphere. It's such a wonderfully atmospheric film. And a lot of suspense. And it's one of the rare occasions where it's a perfect film, especially in regard to sci-fi. Because with sci-fi, it's been taken over with franchises these days, with Star Trek and Aliens and Alien and whatnot. And it's really tough to come across anything that's genuine sci-fi without space aliens, monsters, or gore. But also being dramatic, suspenseful. You have the Brad Pitt film Ad Astra, which I enjoyed. It's not that terribly suspenseful. It's very sentimental. And it's a decent drama. You have the remake of the Soviet film. What the hell is it? Solaris? With George Clooney. And it's a very cerebral film. And it's enjoyable. a film like that, like Ad Astra, it's an acquired taste. A lot of people don't, I would imagine, don't like excessively cerebral, sentimental science fiction. And this would make sense because sci-fi, by default, has some symbiotic dependency on technology, unless it's a fantasy with swords and dragons and fire and crowns and whatnot. But there's the expectation of some level of technology and machinery. And so sentiment doesn't really have that much room to grow in regard to excessive amounts of technology. But Outland is wonderful with suspense, practical effects. It is brilliant with practical effects. It creates dread and gloom and claustrophobia with very, very well done practical effects. I imagine the effects done in that film would have cost a fortune today, just in manpower alone. But that's weird because you'd think that computer graphics would make things cheaper. You'd think. I mean, isn't that the whole ploy with AI? AI is supposed to make everything cheaper. I thought CGI was supposed to make things cheaper with special effects. I mean, maybe that's just my assumption. And yet you have these films that are at best mediocre with gobs and gobs of CGI special effects. And where the hell is the budget going to? But there's one interesting thing that's involved with the movie Outland that for the longest time, every time I watched the film, I never paid attention to. As I'm drawing these rocks with a brush. Isn't that the wonderful irony of using something soft and pointy and delicate as a brush to draw space rocks? It's a prison ship made out of junk and recycled crap that a condemned person is going to spend the last of his days on. But the thing in Outland that really clicked, and I didn't notice it for the longest time. It just went over my head, and then I had to rewind and play this little section quite a few times so I could really listen to it and capture it. And I ended up writing it down. And it's between Sean Connery, the marshal, at a racquetball court that's at the station. And, the doctor comes in and she's mocking him for playing a game by himself and losing. And they sit down and they have a little chat. And this is just shortly before the crescendo of the film. And during their conversations, he says this. And it's shocking because if you think about it, it's a remarkably philosophical idea because everyone deals with that even today. And so I wrote it down. This is what he says. Because maybe they are right. They send me here to this piece of shit because they think I belong here. I want to find out if they're right. There is a whole machine that works because everybody does what they are supposed to do. I found I was supposed to be something I didn't like. That's in the program. That's my rotten little part in the rotten machine. I don't like it. So I'm going to find out if they are right. And there's a pretty big moral conundrum there. Is that do you fill a role in society because you're just expected to be there? You're not to step out of line. You're not going to better yourself. You're not going to do anything. You're going to do the bare minimum because that's what's expected of you. I've worked some pretty dreary dead end jobs, and that seems to be what everyone accepts, that that's just where they're supposed to be. And here he is asking that question. It's an interesting question. And he's not out to prove something to the world, he's proving something to himself. That his life hasn't been a betrayal, that he hasn't betrayed the man he could be to the man he's become. And that's the whole frame of the movie. And it's masked in this weird sci-fi adventure. But if you think about it, that's a pretty intense thing to think about. Are we here because that's what we're supposed to do? What would happen if we decide to break that programming? You hear this crap about The Matrix, which I would consider a distraction. The Matrix, it's a fun movie that's been ruined by the movies that followed it. Had the first Matrix just been the first Matrix and only that, it would have been a cult phenomenon, but we had to make it a franchise. Everything has to be a stupid franchise. So, anyway, it's a good movie. Outland. I highly recommend it. The best sci-fi movies today could barely even come close to touching it. In style, texture, in atmosphere, pacing, acting. It's really quite a gritty film. One I quite enjoy, and I think it should be classified as one of Sean Connery's finest. For what it's worth.